Hey guys, I'm recording this video 28 days before the election, and I kind of just want to give a bit of a temperature check on where I think things stand right now. Um, First of all, to talk about the presidential election, obviously it remains tied and up in the air, but there has been a bit of a consistent polling lead for Harris, nationally at least. But in the different swing states, it's been a much more of a mixed bag. I think the polling in the Sun Belt has been a bit better for Trump. In the Rust Belt, it's been a bit better for Harris. Although certainly it's a lot more closer in both areas than it would have been with Biden. Um, and I think it's notable because we've just had a month ago we had a presidential debate. A week ago we had the vice presidential debate. And I think it's notable just how little effect it had on the standings. I think most people would agree that Harris actually had a really good debate against Trump. Trump was kind of all over the place. He couldn't, he really wasn't in control of himself, and he spouted off some really weird conspiracy theories. And Harris was able to play him, with that prosecutor mindset. She baited him in a sense. So I think most people have the sense that Harris won that debate, and yet the polls right afterwards shifted in Trump's direction. Meanwhile, just a week ago, we had the vice presidential debate. I personally didn't watch that, but from what people have said and the few clips I've seen of it, it sounds like JD Vance had a better night. There was talk that Walz was a bit nervous, although I would argue that, yeah, of course he's nervous. He's running for the second highest office in the land. That's obviously going to be nerve-wracking. Um, but yeah, from what people were saying, Vance was more cool, collected, and he had some good lines. Although at the end he had that line about saying Trump pre gave peacefully gave up power on January 20th, failing to mention that just 2 weeks earlier he tried to stay in power, or at least disrupt the proceedings of the Congress that was going to certify the election against him. But despite Vance having, on the whole, like a better night and being more collected, Harris has been improving in the polls in the past week. And I think it really calls into question, whether debates really matter. And it's notable that it's happening just a few months after what many consider to be the most consequential debate in American history, where Biden had that stunning performance, and it basically ended his campaign eventually. Um, so it's really notable to think about how little effect that this group of debates has had. And it calls into question whether there will even be debates in 4 years from now, because we've already kind of seen the structure that had governed the debates prior. Like it's really started to break down in 2020 when Trump kind of abruptly withdrew from the town hall debate. And this year we didn't even have the Commission on Presidential Debates. We kind of had the campaigns duking it out by themselves. Um, but it's kind of interesting to see just it doesn't matter. Stuff like this. And there was a great article in the Crystal Ball that really highlights how little, I think it was Crystal Ball, it might have been Split Ticket, but it really highlights how little impact recent news events have had, like the Springfield, Ohio story, the second attempt on Trump's life. It's just not reflecting in the polls, and I think we're just really polarized right now. We're going to vote for the side that we stick with. We're going to stick with the side that we vote for, rather, and not really venture forth, with some limited exceptions. And I'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, the race for the White House remains on a knife edge right now, as does the race for the House of Representatives. Um, if you want to know where I think things stand, first of all, Democrats have to unseat 5 Republican incumbents to flip the House, because with redraws, they're going to lose 3 seats in North Carolina, but they're going to gain a seat in Alabama and one in Louisiana. So they got to flip 5 seats in competitive races. They are already favored to flip 3. Anthony Despacito and Brandon Williams in both in New York are both favored to lose. I think they both kind of won in a fluke when, New York State really shifted towards Republicans in 2022. Republicans had a really good night there. That was arguably one of the few states that had a red wave that year. And so it's kind of notable to so in somewhat of a fluke, you had Anthony Despacito winning a Biden plus 14 and a half seat. Now he's embroiled in a scandal and he's likely to lose. Brandon Williams also won in a bit of an upset in the Syracuse area. He's actually a pretty right-wing congressman and a kind of a poor fit for the district. So he's also probably going to lose. Although other New York Republicans like Mike Lawler and Mark Molinaro are looking in like they're in better positions. Um, the third Republican who's currently favored to lose is Don Bacon in Nebraska. That seat is just highly college educated by this point. And it's kind of a minor miracle that Don Bacon has kind of survived as long as he has. But I think with the high levels of college education, the whole fiasco with the attempt to move to winner take all, I honestly think this is it for him. I think Democrats are going to get their first foothold in Nebraska in a while, 6 years after getting a foothold in Kansas. And so that'll be interesting to see. So Democrats have to flip two more seats. I think the next Democratic incumbent who's she's still in the toss up, but I think she's gonna be the next one to be moved into the endangered column. Is Lori Chavez DeRemer? That's a Biden plus 9 seat. It was also on the heels of a pretty good night for Republicans in Oregon, where they only lost the governor's race by like a handful of points. Um, so that's going to be an interesting one to see if Republicans can hold. Again, Biden plus 9. In the kind of the I'd say it's in a part of Oregon that's Democratic leaning. Um, so it'll be interesting to see if Republicans are able to hold that seat. The as for the fifth seat, I honestly don't know where it's going to be. I think it's probably going to be somewhere in Arizona or in California or in what yeah, Arizona and California have 6 seats between the two of them that Democrats are really targeting, which means not only is the House on a knife edge, we're probably not going to know the majority for days or maybe even weeks because California, Arizona, Oregon, those states, they take a while to count. Um, and Democrats have some pretty tough turf that they have to defend. Specifically, Jared Golden in Maine is not looking too hot right now. And so I would, that's going to be a tough seat. That's probably the most Republican part of New England right now. So that's going to be a tough hold for the Democrats, but he's managed to hold on thus far. He's taken a pretty ridiculous stance on tariffs in order to appeal to that Trump base. When you're doing stuff like that, I think you're in trouble. The other is Mary Peltola in Alaska, who holds a Trump plus 10 seat. She holds the most Trump-friendly seat for any Democrat in the House. And she's done it by running hard on local issues and being pro-gun. Um, so those are the two really vulnerable incumbents. Also, Democrats are defending some tough open seats in Michigan. But it'll be really interesting to see like if a lot of the states like in the East and the Central area break one way, we'll probably know on election night who's won the House. But if they're split and it comes down to the West, we're not going to know for a while. So that'll be interesting to see. Now, while the House and the White House are on a knife edge and could go either way, the Senate is looking more and more like a Republican advantage. I would say Republicans probably have a 75% chance of winning the Senate because, as we discussed last time, um, now not only they've been favored to win the Senate for a while, they've been favored to win West Virginia for over a year now, but they are now favored to win Montana, and which means it's going to come down because Republicans are now favored to win Montana. Democrats now have to go on the offense, and they've picked Texas as kind of the seat that they think is going to be seat number 50 for them. We talked about that the last time, that Democrats are kind of already angling for this, and there's been some polling to suggest that those races are going to be close. That Texas could be a surprise, although I do think Trump's going to win, and I think Cruz is going to win too. But there's also been some interesting polling in Ohio. There's been a couple of polls now that show Bernie Moreno leading Sherrod Brown. And I've mentioned this on my Twitter before, but it is a pretty minor, it's kind of a minor miracle for Democrats. And it's really due to the interference of Donald Trump and the inability of Republicans in the Senate leadership to stand up to him, that Republicans have not been able to put Ohio away, and we have 28 days to go. That is really the only thing that has kept Democrats in the running, that they have a chance of holding Ohio, a state that Trump is expected to carry by 8 points. If they lose Ohio, then they're going to have to go on offense in a second state in Florida. And they've already started spending there. So Democrats have really, for this, until really the election really kicked into a general election gear back at Labor Day, they were banking on being able to hold the Trump seats that they already held, to hold the Senate majority, and they really didn't prioritize going on offense until really last month. And now that decision, I think, is starting to come back to bite them, as as Republicans are putting Montana away, and Ohio is, it could still go either way. Again, Republicans, Steve Daines got his pick in Montana. He did not get his pick in Ohio. As a result, because Trump got his pick in Ohio, they're struggling to put Ohio away. They have put Montana away, arguably. And so that has really, that's really the only thing that's kept Democrats somewhat in play. Because right now, if they can hold Ohio, they only have to flip one of Texas or Florida. If they lose Ohio, they have to flip both. So Republicans have always kind of been in the driver's seat for the Senate. And this process really started 12 years ago, back in 2012, when they started losing ground in the red states. Nebraska flipped to the Republicans in 2012, and then 6 years later they lost Indiana, Missouri, and they lost Indiana, Missouri, and North Dakota, and they also lost Florida. So they've been losing ground on this map for over a decade after the big wins they had in 2000 and 2006. If And the thing is, if Democrats only lose Montana and Ohio and West Virginia, they're going to be in the exact same position they were that they are in 6 years from now. Because once those seats are gone, it's going to be hard to see them go on offense. Although, mind you, with someone with Bernie Moreno as a senator, I could always see that seat being somewhat competitive, kind of with because he's kind of like another JD Vance. So those Senate seats are going to be always somewhat competitive as long as someone like JD Vance and Bernie Moreno hold them. So there'll always be those offensive opportunities. But right now, Democrats are still going to be playing a lot of defense. If the red states are the only ones they lose this year, they're still going to be playing defense 6 years from now. So it's going to be up to them in the next two election cycles to make gains wherever they can. They can go on offense in North Carolina, Maine, possibly Texas, and then they can go on offense in Wisconsin 2 years later. So it'll be interesting to see how Democrats come back from an election result like the one we might see this year. On the other hand, if they do even worse and they actually lose some of the Biden states, they're going to have a hard time actually getting the Senate for another 6 years. And it's worth noting there is a possibility that Republicans could get as many as 55 seats. They're not looking too hot in Nevada or Arizona this year, but they've got some decent candidates in Wisconsin and Michigan. Michigan's also an open race, and Pennsylvania, they've got a pretty good candidate, despite the fact that he's from out of state. He's running a really good campaign, and it's been clear for a while this was the blue state that they thought they might have a chance in. So they've been pouring a lot of money there. On the whole, the temperature check right now looks like the House and the White House are on a knife edge, whereas the Senate is pretty much a Republican advantage at this point, pretty clear Republican advantage. So on the whole, there hasn't been much change, and I'd be surprised if there really is a lot of change. We still have 4 weeks to go. It's really starting to get crunch time here. There's not a lot of time left for the election to fundamentally change. It could still. Clinton was leading by a substantial amount 2 to 3 weeks out. We all know how that ended. So there is still time, but I think as we come to the end of October, we're gonna start to see this race really settle in. So it'll be interesting to see, like, this is kind of last call to see where if there's going to be any real shakeup. If there's going to be a shakeup, it's going to happen soon, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So we'll keep an eye out for that, and I'll try to update you whenever I can. I've been busy in my personal life. I've got a new job that I'm excited about, and I'm really excited about things going on. So I'm sorry if I haven't been able to upload as much as I can, but if I'm being honest, I feel myself transitioning more to an offline life, getting to spend time with my family and making in real life friends. It's been a pleasure for me, and this honestly could be the end of the podcast after the election, just because I want to spend more time offline, and Twitter's becoming a harder and harder place to exist right now. And that's really been my main way of promoting it. So I wouldn't be surprised if after this election, maybe I kind of stop doing this and just more focus on me and developing in real life friendships and relationships with my family. Because in the long run, that's going to be a lot more fulfilling for me. But while I'm still doing this, I'm happy to provide the information and the interviews I've been providing. And I will see you guys next time in the next update. And I hope you guys have an amazing day.